Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and today I'm going to be filming my October wrap-up. And before I go any further, I'm just gonna tell you right now that I'm a little bit sick. I have a sore throat, so my voice sounds a little bit funnier than normal, so I do apologize for that. But I read 8 books in the month of October, which is fantastic for me. I've only been averaging about maybe 4 or 5 books a month, so great for me. And I participated in 2 readathons. I did manage to read 6 of the 7 books I put on that TBR. I didn't really read them when I said I was going to read them, but then again I still managed to get the books done, so I'm not going to be too picky about it. The first book I read in October was Wonder Woman by Leigh Bardugo. And if you didn't know, DC recently commissioned 4 young adult authors to do origin stories for some beloved DC characters. Leigh Bardugo is kicking everything off with Wonder Woman. In this version of events, Bardugo really emphasizes the Greek myth portion of Wonder Woman's story, which I really enjoyed. I loved the characters. I thought the story was super engaging and the world building was really interestingly done, and I very much appreciated the way that Leigh Bardugo went with it. I'm not going to say too much more because I do plan to do a full spoiler-free review, so when that goes up I will leave that linked on the screen and down below. But it was such a fun surprise. I thought it was fantastic, and if you're a fan of Percy Jackson, or if you really like the Wonder Woman movie, I highly suggest you pick this up. It was a great read, and I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Now, the second book I read in August was Tower of Dawn by Sarah J. Maas. I say this every time I mention her, but I'm not the biggest fan of Sarah J. Maas's books. They tend to be on the problematic side, but with this one, I think she really worked hard to improve upon some of the critiques that people have given her. Tower of Dawn is the 6th book of the Throne of Glass series. Yes, you heard me right, the 6th book. Because this book was meant to be a novella at first, people were wondering the validity of it. Do I need to read it? If you're any sort of fan of the Throne of Glass world, you absolutely have to read this book. There is a ton of information that is going to be super important. I thought this book was good for what I've read of Sarah J. Maas, but it by no means was like a favorite read of mine. In this book there is a disabled character, and while it made me nervous at first, I am not a disabled person, but I did read a few reviews for Own Voice's disability rep, and they all seem to be very favorable, and I will leave those linked below. This book has a ton of people of color. I think everyone other than Kale, our main character, were people of color, and it was a really nice venture into a different section of the Throne of Glass world, and I really loved the setting and how she developed this different nation. I did think this book veered into being a little bit long. Did find my mind kind of starting to wander at points, which is never really a good sign. I'm still continually frustrated with the fact that Sarah decides to put every single person in a relationship. And this time there was actually a side FF couple, which was really nice to see. Does everyone have to be coupled up? Does everyone have to be in love? It's a little much. I gave Tower of Dawn between 3 and 3.5 stars. I'm not entirely decided yet. I do think it was quite a few steps up from the past 2, Queen of Shadows and Empire Storms. I was not a fan of those. And yeah, no, I did enjoy myself while reading it, and it's been a while. The next book I read, I actually listened to on audio, and that was One Darkthrone by Kendara Blake. Now, I was hesitant going into this one, but it had just been released into the world, and I saw it on the Overdrive app, so I decided might as well get it now. While I was reading the book, I discovered that this is not actually the finale that I thought it was going to be. Kendara Blake decided she wasn't done with the world and she is going to extend the series. This book turned into not a conclusion, and boy did it read like another set of novels. My biggest complaint with the first one, 3 Dark Crowns, if you didn't already know, it's about 3 queens who, in order to get the throne, they have to kill one another when they turn 16. And it's a bunch of political maneuvering, kind of unbalanced dynamics, and what I feel like should be a series I love and it just isn't. I don't remember what I was saying. My biggest complaint with the first one was that it felt like a setup novel. Like all of the pieces were being moved into place to have a really epic conclusion, and it didn't pan out that way, and it was really, really frustrating as a reader. All of the interesting parts I found from the first one were explained away in the second one, which made me end up disliking those bits from the first one. And this series is not one I've connected with. I think that the plot twists were super easy and you could see from a mile away. And if you couldn't find them, they're really cheap reveals, so you didn't think that that would be the super huge plot twist because, like, duh. There were a couple characters I really didn't mind reading from, but they became super naive and made really dumb decisions to move the plot forward, which is something that I hate. In my mind, I've finished the duology, I've put in my time, I'm done, I will not be continuing on. So I did end up giving One Darkthrone 1 out of 5 stars, and I think that's just because it had the potential to be so good, and that's just kind of why I was so disappointed with it. I don't think it's a bad book per se, it's just not the book for me, and I felt bad about giving it a 1 star, but really that's how I feel. It seems a bit harsh. Sorry if you really like the series. I will say if you like the first one, I do think you will like the sequel, but other than that I can't really recommend it. And yeah, no, I think I'm done talking about this series for a while. So the next book I picked up was The Dream Thieves by Maggie Stiefvater. Now this is the second book in the Raven Cycle Quartet, and the first one follows a group of friends attempt to find a dead Welsh king because they believe he will grant them a wish. That is a real crappy description for what the series is. It is such a magical, atmospheric read, and I'm really enjoying going through these books. I'm glad that I'm finally continuing on with the series. I think I did like this one a little bit more than the Raven Boys. I like where the relationships are starting to go and form. The series isn't very plotty, really. The plot is nearly non-existent, so if you don't like character-driven stories, I'd be a little wary of this one, but the characters shine and they're so great. The Raven Boys, I love them so much. Ronan is my favorite. I love where his character is going. The angsty relationships and the dynamics between all of the different characters, I love it. Really enjoyed this read. I gave The Dream Thieves 4.25 out of 5 stars. It was a really solid book. I'm very excited for Blue Lily Lily Blue. The next book I read was The Creeping by Alexandra Sirowy. Now, I knew absolutely nothing about this book other than the fact that it was a YA mystery. This book is about a girl whose friend went missing when she was really, really young, and she's kind of traumatized from that event. I'm really unfamiliar with mysteries, and it's not typically my genre. I don't typically love it, but I thought this one was intriguing enough. I enjoyed the mystery, kind of paranormal aspects to it a lot, but our main character has 3 really good friends and their relationship dynamics kind of concern me at times. I found the romance that developed to be entirely unnecessary. It just didn't need to be there. But I did like the way the mystery played out. I liked how it kind of discusses whether or not humans are worse than monsters, or like humans are truly the monstrous things. It wasn't creepy enough for me, and with a book called The Creeping, you'd think it would be a little creepier, but it was a decent read. I ended up giving The Creeping 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. Now, this was the book I ended up choosing for my Try a Chapter thriller edition, and again, I am unfamiliar with thrillers. I don't tend to pick these up, and I knew absolutely nothing about this book, and I don't want to really say too much about what it's about because I feel as if saying anything may end up spoiling it. I did like this because at first it went in a direction I wasn't really expecting. I appreciated what it was attempting to do. However, I do think that it showed its cards a little bit too early, and around the halfway point, I actually figured out what most of the ending would be. The ending, the author did step it up a little bit, but I knew where she was taking it, and so I wasn't really surprised. I thought the dynamic between the characters was interesting, and I liked how they all became like entangled with one another. That was interesting, but I could not find the motivation to pick this one up. It was kind of a slog to get through, and that's kind of the opposite of what I wanted from a thriller. I wanted a fast-paced thing, but it was a little bit quieter than I wanted it to be. I will say, if you like books that are kind of like cross-genre-y types of stories, I would recommend this because I think you will enjoy what it brings to the table. Sorry, I'm being vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay. And the final book I picked up was Ghostly, which is an anthology. It has a ton of ghost stories. This is like 450 pages, and a lot of them are actually older ghost stories that have been published like years and years back. I was expecting it to be a little bit more scary and haunting, but most of the stories turned out to be a lot more about grief and quieter tales than what I wanted it to be. There was also a story in here that was 100 pages long, and when I'm picking up an anthology where every single story is short, other than that one, I just was really turned off by it. There were a couple of standout 5-star short stories. I really loved Edgar Allan Poe's one. Neil Gaiman's one, which was 3 pages long, was fantastic. And I really liked Ray Bradbury's as well. Other than that, most of the stories I could have left, which is a shame because this collection is really nice, but I think I'm leaning towards giving it 2.5 out of 5 stars. So those are the 8 books that I read in October. I'm proud of the number. I wish I would have liked more of the books I read, but Wonder Woman was fantastic, and I'm really enjoying the Raven cycle. So it wasn't a bad reading month. I really have to start knocking out some of the books that I had on my like yearly TBR, which aren't we all panicking about that? Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you think of them, or just your favorite read in October. And thank you so very much for watching. I will see you again very soon. Bye.